Hi, everyone. This is Sabia from Asmara Bellydance Initiative, and this is our Community Thursdays. We are so excited to have Zara here with us today, all the way from Cairo. Just a little bit of information about her before you really get to know her. She's a very accomplished dancer. She's lived in Cairo and she's lived in the UK. She not only teaches and performs, but she's been in music videos, she's been in Bollywood films. She's a very accomplished, just human being in general. She also has a PhD in physics and loves, from my understanding, you also love to do salsa. So you have all sorts of fun things going on. But you're going to get to know her better now. So we'll just jump right in. And I wanted to ask you what style of belly dance you do.
So, ahlan wa sahlan, marhaba, ahlan wa sahlan from Cairo. I just want to say thank you to the Asmara Bellydance Initiative for having me. I really feel honored to be here. I'm an Egyptian belly dancer. Egyptian by, birth and Egyptian by nature. And I'm a little bit of a biased person in that I think the main belly dance form is Egyptian, and the all belly dance is just a branch kind of Egyptian belly dance. I really believe in Egyptian belly dance being the root of all belly, like the main type of belly dance. And I'm very biased, if I'm honest. I'm like, there's only Egyptian. Egyptian's the only real style. I'm very Egyptian. But Egyptian, even within Egyptian belly dance, I don't know all the styles of Egyptian belly dance. I mean, I've dabbled in lots of them, but I would say I'm a Raqs Shar'i. So I do Raqs Shar'i, which is what people consider Egyptian belly dance. I don't like this word belly dance at all. It's a made up English word that means nothing. And there's not even a literal translation in Arabic. In Egypt, we say Raqs, which means dance, and then the style of dance. So Raqs Sha'bi, Raqs Saidi, Raqs Shar'i, so that's kind of what you consider Oriental. Raqs Saidi, I love Saidi dancing. I love Skandinavia. I love Alexandrian dancing. I love Sha'bi. I love Sha'bi so much. I love Mahrugan so much. I'm of Sha'bi heritage, which means of working class. So my Egyptian family are working class Egyptians. And yeah, all that is Egyptian. There's still loads of Egyptian dance that I've not learned so well, but there's Nubian Filehi. I know Filehi, I know a little bit, but I would say I'm mostly based in Oriental, Saidi, Sha'bi, Baladi, these kind of things.
Okay, and I mean, I'm glad that you kind of brought up that breakdown because I get very conflicted about using the word belly dance for all the reasons you said, but I think that I am also very biased. I feel like Egypt is kind of where it all was birthed.
Yes.
And it's just exciting that like you have training in a lot of the Egyptian based style of belly dance. So I appreciate that breakdown, and hopefully that'll help other people understand, because I know a lot of us kind of we're not sure if we should continue to use the word, but we're also not sure how to replace it. So that's helpful.
I think it's very difficult because I use the word because language is ultimately communication and you want to get your point across. Belly dance is, I'm not against the word belly dance. I just think, when you get asked a question, you do have to clarify a bit. And also, I would never ever, as a result, I use the word belly dance as communication. I'm a belly dancer. When I talk to things, I love belly dance. I don't mind using the word in that context. But when people start using things like, oh, we have to protect belly dance. Well, what are you protecting? What are you looking at? This sacred word that I am the belly dancer. Well, actually, there's not even a translation for belly dancer. And if you're going to start putting rules on what belly dancers can do, well, that makes so sense, because in Egypt and in Masr and the Middle East, there's no such word as belly dancer. There's the ra'asa, which has a lot of negative connotations. A lot of people say I'm a dancer, but then they'll usually say what type of dancer. And a ra'asa Shari, and a ra'asa folklore, the folkloric troupe dancer, say I'm a folkloric dancer or troupe dancer. And a ra'asa Nora dancer. They'll say something like this. So, to then start saying, well, belly dancers can't do this and this, well, what is a belly dancer? It's not, it's such a hard, difficult, when you start putting rules on that, well, I'm a dancer, and then I say what type of dance I'm doing afterwards in Egypt.
Thank you. Yeah, it's just something, it's mindfulness. People just have to know why they're
I
saying
think
what
that's
they're
good.
saying and use it in
I
the
think
right context.
mindfulness is a nice way to put it. I think that's a really lovely way to phrase it. It's mindfulness, yeah.
So I guess thinking about, that mindfulness piece, and doing a dance for a lot of us, like for me in particular, doing a dance that's from a different culture. How important do you feel it is to learn the language so that you can advance as a dancer, like knowing Arabic as a dancer?
Well, this is something that even I myself have struggled with. So I'm mixed race. I'm Egyptian and English, and English is my first language. Arabic is my second language. I talk Arabic quite well, but I still have broken, like a little bit broken. They can tell it's my second language, although I speak it very, very well and a lot better since I live in Egypt. And actually, I came to Egypt not to be a belly dancer. I came to Egypt to improve my Arabic and to not investigate, that sounds weird. As a child, I lived in Egypt, but as an adult, I didn't live in Egypt. And I wanted to come and live in Egypt as an adult Egyptian woman so I could be able to understand what I am being an Egyptian woman. I lived here as a child. I wanted to come here and live as an adult, at least sometime, I was living in England full time. I wanted to at least go and live in Egypt for a year. I was just planning to come for a year or something like that. Although I'd never been away from Egypt that long, I wanted to spend a good chunk of time. And that was because of language. Now, I don't think language to improve my Arabic, because a lot of people will be like, "Oh, your Arabic's broken, Zara, you're not Egyptian." When I was younger, when my Arabic was really bad, now it's quite good. They're like, "Oh, are you Syrian? Your accent's a bit weird." Because I speak Arabic with an East End London accent. And they were a bit
That's
like,
fun though.
"You speak Arabic, but it sounds a little bit off in places." They're like, "Are you from another Arab country?" Because all Arabs don't understand other Arabs that well. We all have our own dialects. They're like, "Are you another type of Arab?" Which I'm very proud. I'm like, well, at least now they think I'm Arab. So you get in there, Zara. But I think it's important that you translate your songs, yes. But I think more so than language, you know what, you can go and you can learn like the words of Arabic in an Arabic class in England or wherever you are in the US. You can learn it off of an app in your phone. But that isn't what's going to connect you to Arabs or Arab culture. You need to, the language is just one thing. It's the mindset that's more what you want. And if you want to be a good dancer, it's entering into a certain type of mindset. Now, I wouldn't say that mindset is exclusively for Arabs, but it's easier for Arabs because this dance has evolved within Egyptian. I'm going to talk about Egyptian belly dance because that's what I know best. And I think that's what belly dance is, as I've already mentioned. But Egyptian belly dance has evolved within Egyptian culture. As a result, the things that are what makes for a good belly dancer comes from being understanding Egyptian culture and having that mindset is easier for Egyptians to access because that's their everyday life and that dance is organic in that setting. Now, I wouldn't say going away and studying Arabic is going to make you be more connected to your dance. You should always translate your songs just for sensible reasons, let's be honest. But it's more about understanding the culture and being able to place yourself in that Egyptian setting or that Arab setting or embracing that culture and appreciating that's kind of like what you need to really connect to dance. And if you let your barriers down and embrace Egyptian culture, which a lot of foreigners find very, 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 very difficult to do, if you pick that, the things that you will reap the rewards. Belly dance is just so amazing when you take on that Egyptian feel of it. It's not imitating. It's not about imitating being Egyptian. I advise very against trying to imitate. To give you one example, so I teach about shabi and mahalganat music and dance a lot. And I hate people that go out and do shabi and they just I think they're trying to imitate something. And it's not about imitating, it's about putting yourself in the mind. What is Shabi music? Where has it come from? What's the history of Shabi? And it's all about this history, and it's putting your mindset. So for example, a Mahraganat music comes from the streets of slums in Cairo. Slums that, like Salam City is where it basically originated. And we're talking about real slums where teenagers, they're in suppressed society, they're really being silenced, they're working class, they have lack of money, lack of this, they can see massive wealth divides in their community. If you pick and their only release is music, and they have massive street weddings that are like parties, because they can't afford to go to clubs like the middle class. If you pit you've got all these frustrations in your life, you're living like horrible living conditions, you've got to work more than you want to work, you're just like, nah, you don't want to do it, you're a teenage kind of boy, it's got quite a lot of masculine energy. Put your head in that kind of mind frame, then you understand why all these crazy moves come out, because it's so liberating, it's like a drug, it's like you're fixed for the week. If you put your mindset in that, that's how you connect, and that's how you become a good dance to my friends. So we put your head in that mindset. That's how it makes it. It's not imitating, I do this, you do this, It's like what's behind that. That's how you connect, not just language. It's about understanding, putting yourself in that image, that, feeling.
I agree. I think that as a dancer, I didn't, because my heart as a belly dancer and just a dancer, because that's always the dance I've wanted to do, has always been with Egyptian culture. And I don't think I really deeply appreciated or understood the movements or the energy or the feeling of what I was doing until I actually went and visited Cairo. And it just took dancing to a different level for me, because it is just, I think sometimes in belly dance, something I've noticed with a lot of people who are not of that culture is we get caught in imitation, like you were saying.
Yes.
And you have to open yourself up to study the culture, just like with other dance forms. If you're doing something, you have to open yourself up beyond the technical piece of the dance. There's other components. So I think that's a great thing for people to think about as dancers. Just like making sure you're intentional beyond just, okay, do I know what the lyrics mean? Do I know how to do this move? Well, do you know where that move comes from and like what you're emulating when you do that or wear that costume? Which is, it's just.
And also, let me just explain something. My battery's running out. Oh, there we go. I forgot I plugged my computer in, but I didn't turn the plug on. Okay.
That's okay.
I also really want to emphasize when you talked about coming to Egypt. Now, I wrote an article, I haven't actually published it yet, but I wrote an article once about, about belly dancers. And I said, I actually think it's essential that belly dancers come to Egypt. If you're not a belly dancer that's come to Egypt, because there are people that open schools in the West, whole schools, whole massive like belly dance companies, belly dance this, they've never been to Egypt. And that scares me. That absolutely scares me. It petrifies me. It petrifies me, it just does. It scares the hell out for so many reasons, and so many reasons that I probably can't articulate well enough, but it's just wrong. I just know it's wrong. You need to come to Egypt. If you're going to be opening a school of Egyptian belly dance and you've never been to Egypt, it's mind-blowingly scary. Also, there are a lot of people that come, because I'm Egyptian, so I view this a lot from the belly dance community, and it's one thing that is hard to stomach, is when people, they might come to Egypt, they might socialize with a lot of Egypt, they might come to Egypt regularly, do holidays to Egypt even, do regular holidays, do belly dance holidays to Egypt, but I feel they're always coming as spectators of Egyptians. Now, Egyptians are not dancing monkeys that you spectate on and go and study like this. It's about coming to Egypt and involving yourself in the culture. Embrace it, not looking at us as some kind of study I see people that go to Egyptian weddings and they're like, oh, I went to an Egyptian wedding. They're like, I understand about sharing experiences, understanding, but there's always sometimes you can get this privilege, this Western privilege of looking down on the Egyptians as some kind of study feature in a zoo. And I feel the belly dancers do this a lot. It's very hard to get the fine line of what you're talking about. You need to study, you need to understand the culture, you need to do all that. But there's a fine line between that and then just be disassociating yourselves from Egyptians and seeing them as study articles. No, these are human beings. They're no different from you. They're on no different level from you. We're talking about just getting in there. That's what I talked about, just getting in that mindset. It's not about studying that mindset. It's about just getting into that mindset and feeling free and lowering your barriers. I think Westerners find it very hard to come and socialize with Egyptians because the culture, I don't think it's that different. I come from working class British family, and actually all humans are pretty much like humans, but if you put your barriers up with like dirty Egyptians, or this is a bit scary, or this is a bit, no, just go with the flow when you come to Egypt. Involve yourself with Egyptians and never be looking down on Egyptians or like some study. And even dancers in Egypt, the way they talk about them, foreign dancers, the way they talk about, not all of them, some of them, you can even still see a disassociation between them and the way they talk about their musicians, or the way they talk about, it's them and us. No, it's we are, you want to be a really good Egyptian belly dancer, you just got to get in there and just treat Egyptians like you would your mates and just take it all in, breathe it all in, man. And you know what? It's like a drug. Egypt is a drug. Egypt is my drug. Oh my God. It's a drug. And you know what? As I said, if you put those barriers down, stop thinking about it's them and us, come to Egypt, just like, not rough it up, because I don't want to talk about Egypt like it's lower, but I mean, we just get in there, get your hands in, really get your hands into it, take it all in, breathe it all in, take away all those barriers and all those rules of what you have in how life should be in your country or your society. Take on this kind of thing, get in that mindset. Seriously, it will benefit your dance so much about belly dance. It's not technique, of course a lot of it is. It's about delivery, understanding, feeling, connection. This will all help if you understand Egyptian culture better.
Those are great points. I think about, especially for like our community as people of color, for those of us who unfortunately really, really want to go and can't afford it, do you have any advice for people who just don't have the means to travel? Or right now, because of COVID, we simply can't.
Yeah, that's a difficult question, and I understand that there's financial issues. When I think about giving this advice that Egyptian belly dancers should go to Egypt, I definitely think if you're going into the professional scope of stuff and you're profiting from dance, you have to go. And I can't see that you can justify, even through finances, if you're profiting quite well and opening schools and doing quite big business through it, then there's no excuse. Why you shouldn't save and go to Egypt. Number one, especially if you're profit. Although I understand I'm not financially very inept, although I used, save and go to Egypt all the time regardless, but I suppose that's my culture, my family is different. But I still think, try to make less excuses and try and save and go to Egypt. If this is what you're doing every weekend, this is how you define yourself. If this is what your profile picture is as a belly dancer doing Egyptian dance and Egyptian clothes, that's your profile picture on Facebook. If you're putting a little Egyptian flag next to your name when writing it in Arabic on your Instagram account, then girl, you should save up and you should go to damn well Egypt, and you should go and fund Egyptians. You should give your money to Egyptians, the economics in the country, go and fund Egyptians, go and do this. This is what you should, if you're doing all that. You're just a hobbyist, Although I still understand we're not all rich, and I think from America it is a little bit harder than the UK. In the UK, I don't think there's any UK person that cannot afford to go to Egypt because it's so close. I don't know about flights from Egypt. I do know they're a bit further and maybe a bit more expensive, yes. But bear in mind what I said, you're profiting, then you should be putting back into the community that you're you're taking from. Back into their economy, that's the word I want, back into their economy. But whilst we're here in Corona, you can't travel, and also you may have genuine financial issues, I understand that. If you can't do that, then I would really think about connecting with Arabs within your own society, that can be very hard. It can be exceptionally hard, regardless of whether you come to Egypt or not, for you to connect with Arab women. Even I know Egyptian belly dancers that have been, not Egyptian, I know foreign belly dancers that come to Egypt, lived here a long time, but they know no Egyptian women. They absolutely know no Egyptian women, and they actually have quite a big barrier towards Egyptian women, find them quite scary. That upsets me because, you know, some of my bestest friends in the world are Egyptian women, and this is advice for anybody, whether they're in belly dancing in Egypt or belly dancing in England or coming to Egypt. Try and connect with Egyptian women and be more forgiving if they are a little bit defensive. You know, being an Egyptian or Arab woman is not easy. It's not easy. Be slightly more forgiving, you know. Because they have, you know, their lives are harder than what you might think, and as a result, you know, it can be hard to connect. And you know, foreign belly dancers can come and live here in England, in Egypt, but they've never connected with Egyptian women because they're not the musicians, they're not the club owners, they're not this. It can be quite hard. So I'd really try and connect with Arabs in your community, but especially the women, you know, really try and be there, put a bit more effort, try and find friends that are Arab women and Egyptian women, try and socialize in those kind of circles. Again, on the same level, not as though you're better than them. And this is some kind of like study homework that I'm giving you. Try and just become friends with people that are from the cultures and stuff that you do. Also, whilst you're online, try and support events. I do different events, and I try and get Egyptians involved. Try and support events with Egyptians in it. Now, this isn't just so you can become a better belly dancer or you can learn the culture better. It's so you can keep this art alive. I see festivals and I see things and I see no new Egyptian dancers. They're kind of like, there's few Egyptians, they've done it quite well. Things are struggling now. It's really hard for new Egyptians to come up. It's not as easy as it used to be because of such an influx of foreign dancers in Egypt. Try and support new acts, not just the old. I know there's some old dancers and like, I'm studying with blah, 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 she's Egyptian. Yes, she is, but she's pretty established. What about the new? What about the next generation? Try and fund generation. When you come to Egypt, try and go and see the Egyptian dancers, not the foreign dancers, although we love the foreign dancers and they're amazing and they're on Instagram and they're so starstruck and you want to go see them. But when you come to Egypt, go and support the Egyptians. When you're online, try and support the Egyptians. When there's a festival, why is there not mostly Egyptians? This is an Egyptian dance festival. The festival is called, I don't know, there's so many weird names like, oh, Nights of Cairo, Nights of Egypt. There's no Egyptians, or there's just one famous Egyptian that's been around for like 100 years. Where's the new Egyptians? Demand this from your festivals, demand this from your haflas, demand this whether it's online or not online, and put your money into Egyptians and especially new Egyptians, because there's a lot of good, and I love them. Alhamdulillah, a lot of them have invested and taught a lot of belly dancers that have been there. But where's the new? And what I'm worried about is, yeah, these guys took the market a long time ago when it was a lot easier. These young Egyptian dancers, female, especially the girls, it's so hard for them to come up now. You need to really be demanding, well, where's the new and fresh Egyptian acts in your shows, your haflas, your classes? You know, it's about where you put your money and how you support them. That's how you'll help keep it alive as well for the future and improve yourself and the dance experience.
That's great advice. And I mean, that's something I even need to be more intentional about. It's not just about, I mean, of course we're doing this because we enjoy it, but if you're taking and you're taking and you're taking from something, what are you giving back to it and how are you supporting it? How are you supporting like the actual people that created this energy in this dance? And you're not the only dancer I've interviewed who's pointed out that there's not a lot of new up and coming Egyptian dancers. Aisha, I talked to her, she said the same thing. And that's sad.
They're hidden. They're not on the forefront. And I did a whole talk as to reasons, what factors which are making new Egyptian belly dancers, why foreigners have. And don't get me wrong, foreign belly dancers do have struggles in Egypt, a lot. Don't get me wrong about that. It's not easy to come to another country and dance, blah, blah. But there's a difference between struggles and systematic privilege and advantage. And foreign belly dancers have systematic advantage. I did a whole talk on this. I'll send you a link. You can add it on here. People can go to it. But I'll just bullet point them. Things like, for example, they do not have to deal with the cultural issues of becoming a belly dancer. You know, even in the West, you know, your dad don't need to be a belly dancer. In Egypt, there's deep history. The word belly dance has such deep association. Even if your parents are quite conservative in the West, belly dance is just like any other dances they don't want their daughter to do. No, belly dance specifically has such deep cultural issues. So no dance has to do with that. Second of all, things like social media. So you have to, with all that, you have to deal with family disassociating from you. You have to deal with neighbours hating you. You have to deal with stuff that no foreign belly dancers would ever have to, not to any extent, because of the cultural history behind it. It might be conservative, but never to this extent. Then you have to deal with things like social media. Now, so the world has become so social media dominant. Okay, you're going to go and shame if belly dancers in Egypt. If you become used to be able to have discretion, you could become a belly dancer, move away from family, or even still stay live with your family, even if they disassociate. You didn't have to put yourself out there publicly. And now there's been a shift in it that where you go to a club, people will film you on their phones. You have to have a massive Instagram account. You have to really put yourself out. There's no discretion in being a belly dancer anymore. That is scary stuff, because it means that these women are going to probably get isolated from their family and then probably bring loads of shame on their family because they have to have an Instagram account, or they still choose to do it the old school way, which is that they're not online, but that means that they aren't connecting with you guys out in the West and all that has to come from profiting with the broader belly dance community. Does that make sense? That's just one, yeah.
Yeah, that makes complete sense.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
And then there's some other issues, such as foreigners will always benefit from, there's a white Western privilege. There's always gonna, now from colonial times, there has been an emphasis in Egyptian culture. You know, the Brits come over, the French come over, and they're like, our society are better, you are undeveloped, let us show you how to do this. We're going to what's it called, like, I don't know, enlighten you, or I don't know, make you better. We are the foreigners, this is how life is. Now, it's been colonial, I think it's colonial brainwashing. I feel like a lot of Egyptians are internally, and it's unsurprising, internally slightly racist towards themselves. Now, with the idea that foreign is always better. You know, I say I like to buy my clothes that are made from Egyptians. They're like, made in Egypt? Why don't you get it made in Italy or made in France? They're the clothes we want. No, I love my clothes. I love handmade stuff. I love my handmade jewelry in Egypt. I love all this. And I love handmade, like I have all these little handmade little things that I love. They think foreign is better. There's this association and aspiration towards the West. Now, I understand some of it. For example, upper middle class people, they want to go out to bars and wear Western clothes. And I understand that. Some of it comes with being liberty. And I do believe that we need to be a bit more liberal in England, in Egypt, and take on, but I don't necessarily think that means you're taking on Western things. I just think you're taking on equality. That does not, and that, you know, the West is definitely not mastered being equal. You know, feminism is still an issue. I believe we should be more feminist in Egypt, for example, less racist, for example, all this. And you might say, oh, that's, you know, being more feminist is like, you want to be more Western. No, because the West still have not mastered that. So it's just about being more, do you understand? So yes, I believe that we should, you know, be more liberal. Kids should be able to go out and get drunk. But there is this slight Western aspiration. And if you're upper class, you aspire to be more, as you're talking English, for example, your schooling is going to be in English, because English is the ultimate. You go and do an English syllabus at your school, and oh, I want a foreign belly dancer. So the foreign belly dancers really do benefit from this internalized, which has come from colonial days. There is also some kind of, there's also that little bit of liking lighter skin, for example, in foreign dancers, although they do like darker hair, for example, they don't really like blonde, but there is that also white privilege, but it's also a lot about this Western foreign is better, and Egyptians talk so down about themselves, and it really annoys me. And what annoys me is Egyptians talk so down about themselves, so down about their cultures. You can see it a lot. And they might, for example, say stuff like, oh, these Egyptians are like this and this like this. And I want all foreign belly dancers in Egypt, outside of Egypt, to be aware. Fine, Egyptians might talk about themselves like that, but you cannot imitate that. This is what really annoys me. And I call out a lot of belly dancers online being racist towards Egyptians, and so many of them are. That's quite a racist comment. You're not allowed to say, oh, but my friend, he's Egyptian, and he says the same. Yeah, okay, it's just different. It's just different, okay? I'm not justifying his internal racism, but there's a difference between me saying it as an Egyptian, saying that Egyptians are lazy, towards you, somebody else that has got Western or white or whatever privilege, sitting and saying it. And I shouldn't be saying that about my own culture, but that comes from my own issues. There's a big difference between me saying it and you saying it. And never justify talking about Egyptians badly because Egyptians talked about Egyptians badly. Most of them are unfortunately internally racist towards themselves because of everything that's happened in history, and that you're benefiting from that. And even now that you can even be towards racist towards them because it's something that you know what I mean? Like, you even got the privilege so much from all that past history that you can even justify your own racism with their internalized racism. It's just, I wish I could communicate that better, but it's just frustrating.
The beautiful thing though is our platform is for dancers of color, people of color. And I can say that a lot of us understand that. We don't understand it from the context of, being Egyptian, but being a Black woman in the United States, I see that a lot in the Black community of like a lot of like systematic racism, creating like a community of Black people who are very hard on ourselves. And then there's this extra layer of other people come in and they're like, oh, let me talk about Black people. And it's like, no. We need to work on how we feel about, our skin tone, if we're darker, or, maybe the way that we talk. But you don't get to speak on that. We have to do our own internal work. But so I hope that
you can't justify it by that. They can't say, well, I know a Black woman and she says this, that all Black people, that you can't justify it by that if you're not Black. It's not right that she's saying that about her culture, but that's your own issues. You can't then start justifying you being racist towards Black people because some Black person said this or that. That's actually the ultimate definition of how the system is systematically racist, that they have the privilege to blame the racism on the people that are suffering from the racism in the first place. Audre Lorde is one of my favorite women. I have so many quotes. I use them daily in my life. I recite them back to myself. And she has a very powerful quote. And it says, I'll paraphrase it. I don't know the exact quote. Please look it up. Please look up Audre Lorde. She's an amazing, inspirational woman, one of the biggest inspirational writers that I love to follow. But she says something along the lines of, true revolution or true liberation. It comes from, I wish I knew the quote off by heart. Okay, let me just think about it. Comes from changing the part of the oppressor that lives within inside you. There's that true liberation or true, you want to liberate yourself from oppression. It comes from the true liberation is liberating yourself from the oppressor that lives within inside you. Now, I can really emphasize that, and I'm sure we all can as women. There's also women issues on top of racism, on top of all that, we're talking about. But, as a woman, you see the other woman as competition. Boys don't see each other like that. We're more bitchy towards women. And the biggest power of sexism and patriarchy is that women play off each other. They're so bitchy towards each other. They're suppressing each other. How hard and nasty women are to other women is what's keeping men in power, or unsisterhoodly we are. I really believe in sisterhood. And I try, and I'm more forgiving, like I was talking about, being a little bit more forgiving towards Egyptian women if they're hard to, get to know, or, or they, being more forgiving because, these women have not had it easy. It's no wonder they're, and we've all been slightly brainwashed to hate ourselves. I believe as a woman, I believe we're all internally sexist and racist, and we all have to really work on reprogramming ourselves. To Tolla, I don't know what the words in there, like shield, I'm talking Arabic now, like pull out the racism and sexism that is within yourself. Even I find myself being slightly racist towards Egyptians and being like this and talking down to them like as a lowest, and I have to stop myself, and even I find myself being sexist towards other women. I have to pull that out of myself and pull that. Yeah.
It's really important for people to think about these things. And I think that self-awareness, which we talked a lot about in these interviews with different dancers, is really important. I wanted to ask you, selfishly as well, as another like, I don't want to quite call it biracial, but I said bicultural and biracial in the question, as somebody coming from two cultures, and being a person of color that also has whiteness associated with your background. And I also come from that I have a German background as well. How do you feel like that impacts your dance journey, and then your just journey as a human as you navigate all of these things? Because I know you've lived in Europe and you've lived in Egypt. So what has it been like going back and forth, having that experience?
So I've struggled a lot being by, I call it mixed race. That's just how I always refer to myself. So just so so I'm mixed race, and I have these two cultures. It's been very difficult. I think anybody who's mixed race finds it very difficult. Your identification, and this is another Audrey, which is you have to define yourself for yourself, or people will rip you to pieces or put them into your box. I'm paraphrasing it, but it's true. And I've had to, as I've got older, realize I have to define myself. If I let other people define me, they will rip you into little pieces. And everybody has denied me some part of my heritage in my life. I'm in England, and people are like, "Where are you from?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm a Londoner. I'm from London." I mean, "Oh yeah, but where are you really from? Where are you really from?" "I'm English." Because I just got sick of telling people I'm Egyptian because nobody believes it. "Oh, you're not Egyptian." Like, well, how many Egyptian people do you bloody know? "Oh, but you're not Egyptian." Well, what does an Egyptian look like? How many Egyptian people do you bloody know? So I just say I'm English. "No, you're not English. You don't look English. You look this, you look that." And they just want to tell me that I look Turkish, or that I look Italian, or look this. And they've already defined in their mind, why are you even bothering to ask me? All you do is give me an insecurity about myself. So now I'm just here. Look, if you don't think I'm Egyptian, you don't think I'm English, you don't think this, whatever. I've had to struggle with identification. And the reason I came to live in Egypt wasn't to become a belly dancer. I came, like I told you, improve my Arabic. So many people tell me, "Well, your Arabic's broken, you're not Egyptian, and you're this." And they deny me so much of my heritage, and it hurts so much because my English family, alhamdulillah, thank God, my mom is actually one of the least. I'm so glad that you can be biracial and have quite an internally racist mother. My mom's the English white person, but my mom is actually one of the least racist people that I've ever met in my life, and I'm so blessed that I have my mom like that. She never talks down Egyptian. All my Egyptian family love her, and she just comes in and lives like an Egyptian. Like, my mom is like, she's never like, I can see other people I know with half Egyptian children, and the way their mothers bitch, or their white parents bitches about Egyptian culture. I'm so glad my mother never did that for me, alhamdulillah, because I think it's quite hard. Because I still think when you're multicultural, your white parent could very possibly have fetishized your brown or your multicultural. And I think there's a lot of fetishization, and there's a lot of women and men, but I'm just going to talk about my kids. I know a lot of half mixed race Egyptian kids, and their moms had a fetish with little Egyptian Arab men, or kids, and they like that, and they've got and I'm sure there was love, but there's a fine line, and anybody who goes into and I've had experiences with myself when I dated a white middle class man, is I realized I was his fetish. I'm sure he loved me in that setting, but I was his fetish because I come from very working class. I was his poor, slightly brown foreign girlfriend, and I think that really turned him on, was that privilege above me. And as a result, I realized in our relationship we are not equals, and I was his fetish fantasy, and he dated me from quite young, and I realized, oh God, I'm just his he loves the fetish of having a lower class, because he was quite upper class, so not class issue, upper class, slightly brown, slightly foreign, mouthy, girlfriend that annoyed his mum a bit, he loved that fetish. And, as a result, so I'm very lucky that my biracial, my mixed race heritage, that I have a very good mother, and that's really hard. And if any of you have mixed race children, be sure never to bitch about one or the other, or make sure, even if you have that child for the fetish, that you treat, you don't talk down about their other culture. It's so hard for mixed race kids in racist families, especially because a lot of my mum and dad got divorced. But alhamdulillah, my mum was always embracive of my Egyptian culture. She loves Egyptian culture. She talks about it more, but she loves it in a way that isn't like, oh, I go to Egypt every year, and no, she just is Egyptian. She's never fetishized it or you know, she just lives it, you know, it's just where her life took her. Now, concerning my work job, I'm not going to lie, I benefit a lot from having white privilege or foreign privilege. I have benefited so much from having white privilege in working in belly dance. So I can always quote, you know, oh, they want a foreign belly dancer. Well, I can be a foreign belly dancer. Personally, I hate it because, you know, I came to Egypt to understand myself more as an Egyptian. But I'm not going to lie. But what I have learned is I have this very unique position of being Egyptian and foreign. And I, as a result, have been able to be in Egyptian culture. And I can see the privilege difference between foreign belly dancers and Egyptian belly dancers. And I've lived it 3 or 4 years, and I can see it. And as a result, I feel very, I benefit from this privilege, but how do and it annoys me because actually I want Egyptians to do well. I want Egyptian belly dancers to be at the top because I am Egyptian at the same time. Even though I benefit from this white privilege, I want to be Egyptians to be on top. And what I've done is I've decided, because I have this privilege, how can I use my privilege? And the best way is to talk out about it. And I've done talks on how foreign belly dancers are benefiting. I do events where I host Egyptians. I try to host Egyptians, and I do my best. And I've cleared my aim, especially with 2021, to be more supportive of Egyptians and understand my privilege and use it to benefit. And because change starts with yourself. And the change I want to see in the world is I want to see Egyptians. So what can I do? And how can I use my privilege? How can I use my platform to improve belly dancers? And we should all be thinking about that. Like I talked about where you put your money. Use your privilege to make the changes you want to see.
You're right. We have to realize as people that we are multifaceted. We have so many layers, and we all have levels of privilege. We all have disadvantages, and we all have internal things that we need to sort through that aren't really even about us. That's colonialism, it's systematic racism and oppression and misogyny. But people have to be self-aware, and if you're not a self-aware person, it's hard to connect to other people, cultures, yourself. You really have to do the work and be like, why am I doing this? How is it benefiting me? How am I helping other people? Even though this is dance and, you know, that's the core of what we're doing with this, dance is a part of your life. Like, just because this is a belly dance interview or you're a belly dancer, or I'm a belly dancer, it doesn't mean that we don't have to take into account, you know, all of these other things, because if you don't, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? You can't have an authentic experience and not think about those things.
I completely agree. But I feel like our belly dance community has been based on people that have never thought about this. And the people in power aren't necessarily thinking about these issues. That's what I feel is a very big, deep issue in belly dance. Or come from old school times when this wasn't so, I mean, it's always been important, but wasn't, you know, now, you know, it's not, I don't think it's justifiable anymore. If that makes sense.
No, that definitely makes sense. So I would say, I mean, I don't know, we've talked about so many amazing things. Like, what is a takeaway that you would give dancers, like knowing what you know, and, you know, knowing the experience of being, you know, a person of color? Like, what would you tell dancers of color who want to strive for more or connect more in this community, especially with the environment and climate we're in now? What's like the one thing you'd want them to really know?
Like I said before, now I really want to emphasize, I feel so privileged that I'm here today to come and do this interview, but of course I obviously I benefit a lot from white privilege and all that, but coming, like I said, from just what I've experienced of being mixed race, is that exactly what I said, was that paraphrase that I said, is that you really need to define yourself for yourself. And because you need to go out into the world strong, even the belly dance world, actually more so than the normal world. God, you know what I mean?
It's a little rough.
It's and you know what? When you go out and belly dance, you have to be a really good belly dancer. You have to dance with a little bit of your heart on your sleeve, kind of thing, to really connect with the audience. And it's really scary to open up and give a little bit of yourself to be a really good dancer. Now, how you're more likely to be able to do that if you have trust and faith and love for yourself. And that's what I really recommend. And I'm not there yet all the time. I still doubt myself. I still question myself. I still get really annoyed when people try to define me as not this or not that, or make comments about how I look, what my body shape is, my hair, everything. But I've just had to take a step back. And even I have all these insecurities, but I work every day on being more self-loving, but it's more like, not arrogant. It's more self-caring, less hard on myself, number one, and more accepting of myself and defining myself for myself. And, if you don't like it, it's just how I am. I can't change. It's to being self-accepting, I think you really define yourself. Don't let others define you, because you know what, they're going to come in, they're going to stick you in little boxes, especially if they don't feel, but really define yourself. There's so many people that are ready to trample all over you, make you, just really, have confidence in yourself, believe in yourself. And of course, okay, we can't change belly dance, but I was talking about changing what we can change in yourself and taking the power back into your hand. Take the power back into your hands, because you give your power, so just take it back. And especially in the belly dance world, of course, there's like systematic systems that you want to break down, but what you have in your hand, take it back and own it for yourself.
Reclaiming is important. It really is, and I think that's some great advice for like where people need to start. To do the work so that they can really enjoy this and love themselves, because that's what the most important thing is. And I really appreciate, I'm so happy that we were able to interview you, and you've been so generous with your time. I know that you have a lot of ways people can connect with you, and you have resources. So I'll make sure when this airs that I add all that. So we'll make sure that's there. I'm not going to just put it on the end of the video like I normally do, because I really want to make sure that we can get everything out there for people to access. So I don't know, there's so much that people can think about from this interview. If people do want to stay in touch with you, what's the best thing? Is it your social media handles right now?
Facebook is probably the more personal, and not my personal Facebook profile is probably the most personal way you can ask me questions. I'm very bad at replying messages. Sometimes it takes me a couple of days. I'm so bad. It's nothing personal. Please don't get any faults, but I put them in my mind. Sometimes I think I've replied to them in my mind, because I write the message in my head, but I don't write it. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I'm going to say. And I think I said it. But please do message me and be patient. I'm here all the time. And just, get in touch. Facebook is probably the best, but I do, of course, have Facebook. I have an official Facebook page as well. I have my Insta, I have my website, I have my email, I have my magazine. Please come to what, and I also want you to know, I'm really talking about how I want to use my privilege to benefit others, how I use my power to change. So I have my privilege, and I'm trying to change from what I've learned about how, and as a result, I have quite a big social media stance, and I have a magazine, and I just want to give a shout out to all the dancers of color that please use me as much as you can. I'm trying to use my platforms as best as I can. I have pamphlets, and I have magazines, and I have quite good social media, alhamdulillah. Feel free to contact with me, and I'll do to the best of my abilities to support as well, because that's how I want to change, is using the power that I have to change. So I'm here, and use and utilize me. And I've had quite a lot of amazing black dancers featured in my magazine, and I would love to have more dance just casually, because why shouldn't we, So please do contact me, just anything, I'm here to work. I'm ready to work with people and support each other,
We'll definitely share that information, that. Take advantage of it, you guys. If you have stories you want to share, if you just want to connect, I think that's a great thing. Let's use our voices. So Zara, we really appreciate your time, and we're going to definitely keep in touch. But this was Community Thursday. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in.